totally welcome to drop in. But yeah, I would recommend looking at these for some frequently asked questions. Okay, let's talk about our different categories here. So I'm just gonna say this. 26. We have one general category and we have three discretionary categories. So let me go through the general category and then the rest of the information will permeate throughout the discretionary categories, and you'll see what I mean. So the general category, we expect applicants to have an 80 to an 84 last two GPA. So the last 20 courses you've taken, we want them to be between an 80 and an 84 as an average. It's not a firm cutoff, but the higher is the better. So like I said, the average for the last two was a 3.7, or between an 80 and 84. That means that some people got in with a little lower and some people got in with a little higher. So if you feel like you're a competitive applicant, please apply, because you want to give yourself a chance to get in. It's not a cutoff, like I said. So I guess the next bullet depends on a number of factors determined on a case-by-case basis. So yeah, so we don't just cut people off, and our applicant pool fluctuates throughout the years. So this could change this year, but this is generally what it is. Our class averages for the fall of 2021, so our class of 2024, which we just admitted, was a 3.6 cumulative GPA, so all of their years of school combined, and a 3.7 last two GPA. Their LSAT scores was a 162 mean and a 163 median, which is above the 80th percentile, if you are wondering.
Spencer, can I ask a question, since you just brought up the LSATs again? And if you can go back to that, yeah, so when they're looking at the mean and the median LSAT scores, we have a question about what Western does, how Western treats applicants who've written the LSAT multiple times. So how does your LSAT score get calculated then?
We take your highest score, and we also view your average score, but it's not a make or break thing, your average score. So I wouldn't worry about that. We take your highest score. And even let's say you do well, you're satisfied with your score, but you know you can do better, and you're applying by November 1st, you can always write it in November, or sorry, you can always write it in January or November or February and increase your score. So that's an option for someone who may want to increase their score and knows they can bump their score up a little bit more. But yeah, we take your highest score.
Okay, but that's not always the case across all law schools, correct?
So I feel like some of them take your most recent score.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure. I think a
Okay.
few of the schools that I've overheard on panels such as these have said they take the highest. So
Yeah.
I
So
think
it's
generally
yeah,
they take the highest.
yeah, it's probably a good idea for students to always check with the law schools you're applying to, just to make sure. But it's nice to hear what Western's approach. So thanks for clarifying
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Yeah, definitely follow up on a school by school basis. Now onto the discretionary categories. So if you are an Indigenous person, or if you're applying under the access category or the mature category, we have categories for you. So we have three parts of our we have two parts of our personal statement on the personal profile, part A and part B. So part A is a writing sample, or as a writing section, and you can discuss what makes you a competitive applicant and what you'll bring to law school, and how, just present yourself in the most competitive way possible. In part B, it's more of an open-ended, artistic sort of question, so you'll see that once you apply. And part C is open for only the Indigenous and the access category. So the Indigenous applicants can write about their ties to their Indigenous community and discuss their involvement in their community in part C. And then the access category, which is defined as people who have experienced barriers, circumstances, health related, socioeconomic related, cultural related barriers that have impeded them throughout time at school or at their life, and they just feel like they were impeded in some way and couldn't reach their best scores. Either mostly they refer to their undergraduate career, and this is totally great. We have this section for students to discuss what they've went through and how they've overcame it, and how they're doing, and they can explain some of the discrepancies between their potential and what is outlined on their GPA or outlined on their transcript. So if this applies to you, or if you have questions about this that are specific and personal, definitely feel free to send us an email or give us a call so we can discuss this. But just know that just provide some documentation, and you'll most likely, we'll most likely be good with that. So just remember to document those things. Let's do a bit of information about the class of 2024. So we had 185 people in our incoming class, but we had 2,800 applications. Now, don't let this scare you. For some reason, students choose other schools other than Western Law. I'm not sure why. So we offered more than just 185 offers. Also, some students drop off the map because they've decided law isn't for them. So I just want you all, as my King's friends, to know that it's not as slim as a margin as 185 out of 2,800. It's more like it's more than that. So don't let that scare you. The average age of our class member was 23. Our gender split was 55% female, 42% male, and 3% other, or chosen other. And 16% of our incoming class had master's degrees. 13% of our class was mature students. We had 34 different institutions represented in Western Law's incoming class of 2024, and 48 different academic programs. So if you're wondering if your King's program is suitable for law school, it is because we have 48 different types of programs represented. So yeah, you'll be fine. We have 9 different provinces represented in our incoming class out of the 10. And yeah, okay, great. So let's talk about financing your legal education, and then we'll wrap it up and get to some Q&A. So financing your legal education, 21,000 per year is our tuition. It's not the highest in the country, but it is still quite high. So let's talk about how you can secure some sources of funding so you can complete law school. I like to talk about the scholarships because those are automatically offered to those who apply to Western Law. You don't have to specifically apply for scholarships. So if you qualify for the scholarship, a lot of them are based on your GPA and your academic scores. So if you have a high academic score, you can secure the Dean of Law scholarship, and a few of those are offered at $40,000, and even more of those are offered at $20,000. So that's a great source of funding. Some of the other ways you can secure funding include OSAP. So you can apply for OSAP. You can apply for bursaries and scholarships through Western Main Campus Registrar. And since you would be a main campus student, you can definitely apply for those. You're eligible to apply for them. And a few of the other ways you can secure your funding is using your savings, getting a job, asking your family member for help, and asking banks if they will give you a student line of credit. And if you are admitted, I or someone else will write you a letter of confirmation of enrollment, and then you can secure your funding through that, hopefully. Like I just said, we do offer the Dean of Law entrance scholarships, and we also offer other scholarships for based on merit, financial need, and other specific criteria, such as we have a few scholarships for Black students, such as the Violet King Award, and those are scholarships based on other criteria. Yeah. Other Western Law resources are the following. We have our Black Students Law School Application Package. So in 2022 spring, you can apply for that. And then if you are applying to be admitted in 2023 and you're applying by November 1st, this is for you this year. The Black Law Students Application Package, pretty much it's you get the $200 for the OLSAS fee waived, and you get the $100 fee to apply to Western Law waived. So it's a great way to save some money, and definitely look into that in spring 2022 when it's available. We also have our free LSAT prep course for Black, Indigenous, and low-income students every summer, and that's going to be open in January, and it closes in sometime in April. So if you apply for this, then you'll have a free LSAT prep course, and this is awesome. It's a great resource, and it's a great way to up your score and to feel confident entering law school or entering the application process. So again, if you are applying by November 1st, 2022, this is for you. We have other and new scholarships for our Black and Indigenous students, which is awesome. And we have an increase in Western Law student bursary programs for all students. Look at the chat. I'm so excited to get to those questions soon.
Spencer, since you're talking about the scholarships, are you able to
Yeah.
say anything more about the law firm scholarships? Maybe explain what they entail and how they work.
Well, the law firm scholarships are simply law firms who have donated and will give you a scholarship. It's nothing really more than that. So yeah, that's pretty much all that I know about it. But yeah, that's another opportunity to secure funding through Western Law specifically. But if you want to secure funding again, you can apply through Western's registrar's office. Let's speak about some of the highlights of Western Law. As you all know, being a Western student, it's amazing here. And here's some highlights about our law school specifically that you may not know about. So if you are admitted into our program, we have a small group program, which means that we divide the incoming class of 185 students into 9 small groups. So you have about 20 students in your small group. And every incoming law student takes the exact same courses, but those in your small group will be in the exact same classes as you. So you'll have familiar faces and friends and support systems in every class that you take, and these will be friends for life. A lot of our alumni, even our Dean of Law, Erica Chamberlain, who is a graduate of Western Law, and our alumni, they keep in regular contact with their small group members because they're friends for life and contacts for life. So that's one of the ways that Western Law sets themselves apart from the other programs, is because we really have a cohesive collegial environment at Western Law. All of our classes are in the law building, so it's a nice small tight-knit community within a huge campus, much like King's, the best of both worlds. The induction ceremony for professionalism. So we just ran that in early September, and that was a great ceremony to invite our incoming class into Western Law and to Western in general. They signed the professionalism pledge, they got their backpack, they met each other. It was a great, awesome environment, and we got to do it in person this year safely, which was awesome. We did it last year in person, but that was we had to do it over a few sessions because of the distancing requirements. We have 8 curricular streams at Western Law, including business law, environmental law, and others. So that's something you can specialize in your upper years at Western Law. It's not a specialization per se, but it's specific courses that will help you to know more in an area. And if you want more information about that, once you're admitted, you can talk to our senior academic counselor. We have numerous electives in our upper years, experiential learning, legal clinics. We have our Western Legal Clinic or Community Legal Services on the 2nd floor here. And that is a way for students to get involved in real time law, real cases, helping people in our community for free who need it. We also have international exchange programs. We have lawyering skills competitions, a high article placement rate, a wellness counselor here at Western Law, and other co-curricular activities, strong student engagement, and expert professors. So now we'll get to the Q&A.
Spencer, I'll
yep.
help you. I'll help walk you through some of the questions that I've been following here, because some of them can sort of be bunched together.
Awesome.
So earlier you mentioned that Western prioritizes, or at least looks more favorably upon students who took a full course load throughout their undergraduate degree, especially at the 3rd and 4th year level. But we know that because of COVID, especially last year, but this year to a certain extent as well, some students might have decided to take a reduced course load. So is Western going to be sensitive to the context of COVID from last year and this year?
Yes, it's mixed. It's mixed. So yes, we understand that the pandemic affected people, especially in 2020. But we would like you to outline why you took a reduced course load in your personal statement. So then we're not assuming that you just reduced your course load for the sake of it. Excuse me. So I don't think that the COVID situation, yes, we're sensitive to it, but in general, if you take a reduced course load, please let us know why. It could be due to financial reasons. Maybe you have to work like 2 jobs and taking 5 credits is too much, right? That's totally fine, but just let us know why that happens so we're not assuming things.
Yeah,
that's pretty much the bottom line with that.
Okay, that's good advice to always explain it. Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
What if a student 1 year during the normal school year took a half credit less than normal, but then filled it in the summer with a summer course?
That's fine too. That's great.
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah.
There's a question about whether it's frowned upon to take a year off between finishing your undergrad and then applying to law school. I'm assuming the answer is no, that it's not frowned upon at all.
So that would be taking a year off after you had graduated and then applying to law school.
Yeah, so just working or traveling or whatever.
That's good, because if anything, that will add to your personal statement and it will add to your desire to go to law school. So I think it's really nice. I actually admire people who do that, because a lot of students really want to get into law school right after they graduate. And I think it's courageous to take a year off and to be really sure about your decision. So I think that's nice too.
Yeah. We have a couple of questions about the how the admissions committee looks at your mix of extracurriculars and grades and LSAT scores. So let's say you're someone who's done a lot of extracurriculars and can point to really good leadership roles, but your GPA or your LSAT is a little lower than, than the best, or even a little lower than average. What kind of difference does that make? Can you maybe the question is, can you make up for lower numerical scores with really good leadership skills and extracurriculars?
Yes and no. I mean, we want your scores to be within that competitive range, and that's why I don't say cutoff, and that's why we don't say cutoff. So everyone's assessed individually and holistically. So if you think that your scores are on that cusp or in that range, and you have a great personal profile and you feel really confident, then definitely apply. If you feel as though you can improve your scores or improve your grades or improve your profile, we don't want you to waste your time, because it's quite a time-consuming process and quite an arduous process to apply to law school. So if you feel as though you can improve your scores, definitely apply the following year. But if you feel confident in your scores, you might be one of those students, not one, but several or many of those students who are not at the exact range, because nothing's black and white. So if you're not at that exact range, you could get in, and that's determined holistically. So if you're one of those students, definitely focus on your strengths of your application. Try to be confident in yourself, because it's a very impersonal process applying to law school. And I would suggest focusing on your strengths and definitely um, definitely look. Yeah, definitely think positively about your application because you never know.
Okay. Can you remind us again whether the LSAT prep programs are held online as well as in person?
They might. I've only been here for about 6 months now at Western Law, but I think they were online last year. I don't know if they will be online
Okay,
this coming year. So maybe in January when we announce I think we might be more specific with that. So definitely check on our website in January or send me an email in January.
sure. Um, what more can you tell us about articling and where students, where Western law students end up articling? Is it mostly in London or do they go further afield?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure because I to be honest, I'm not experienced enough to answer that, and I haven't been through a full cycle yet. So if someone's interested in that specific uh, information, please send me an email and I will talk to our admissions. Sorry, I'll talk to our careers people and they'll tell me what that what that's sort of like. So I can't really speak to that. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Thank you for being honest, but also being open to people following up with you.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely
I,
do that.
I can certainly say that a former King student of mine who has gone through Western law and I think might be finishing up this year, but she did her articling with the federal government, and so that can potentially take you um, outside of London for sure.
And articling means what exactly again? It means you're doing your law practical.
Yeah, so it's
Okay.
usually, I think it's after your third year of law school.
Hmm.
Normally, you spend a year doing practical work in a law setting. So at a law firm, or in a government department in their legal division, for example. So it's your practical on the ground training.
Yeah, I can speak to recruitment a bit because we have this job board at Western Law where employers and firms will post directly to our students. So only our students have access to it. And I know many of them are either from the Toronto area or really want to work in Toronto or get placed in Toronto. So, and also London. So yeah, I would say it's once you have your Western law education, you can go where you'd like to go.
Mhm. If a student does decide to take 1 year off after finishing at King's, when should they take the LSAT and when should they apply to Western law? Do they wait a whole year until the next cycle? Is that the normal thing to do?
Um, if you're taking a year off, yeah, I see that in the comments. So you graduate in May. You can take the LSAT in June. You can take the LSAT in August. You can take it in, whenever. Um, but I would say take it earlier than later because I feel like if I was applying to law school and maybe I had a bad day on the LSAT day, that that might impact my application heavily, right? So if I don't get a good score and I waited till the last minute. So I would definitely suggest writing it earlier and when you're ready. I wouldn't suggest writing it during the following times, during exams, April exams especially. Don't do that. You already have enough to worry about. But if you have an entire year and you're thinking ahead, write it when you're ready, but give yourself enough time to rewrite it at least once before the deadline. So that would be, yeah. So the latest would be, let's say, let's just backtrack here. Let's say you wrote it like, okay, so let's not make it hypothetical. The we accepted until February 2022 for this cycle. So if you're applying this cycle, you can write it the last time in February 2022. I would recommend January 2022 because then in February we will receive your scores, and then that way there's still some space in the class. Whereas in February we accept the scores, we'll get it in March, but the class is filling up as we speak then. So that would be what I would recommend. And in general, definitely write it when you're ready and when you have it, and with enough time to rewrite it if possible.
Yeah, that's good advice. That sounds really good to me.
Mhm.
Spencer, can you read the second last comment from
If we
Michelle
receive
there?
Dean's honor or other awards, do we mention this in the sketch along with the verifier or in a personal statement? Both. Yeah, both. Definitely recommend saying that in both. You can put the Dean's honor under the A, so for awards in your verifier sketch or your autobiographical sketch. Um, yeah, I don't know if you need to have a person to verify it or if you can simply give the King's Dean's numbers office out or something. I wouldn't know how you would go around doing that, but I'll leave that up to you. But yeah, you can definitely, here's an example of someone who might use their dean's honor list to illustrate how they would be a strong law student, right? Like, I'm not saying what you should say, but some things you could say is like, I'm a strong student, I'm serious about school, you know, I've had law in my sights for a long time and stuff like that, you know what I mean? Like that sort of reasoning, I think, goes a long way to help the people in the admissions committee and myself uh, when we read your application to see, okay, this person is serious, this person is a strong applicant. So
Yeah. If I can make one comment right now about the personal statement, and this is especially for students who have had what they think is some important extracurricular experience. Maybe you've had a leadership position in a club. Don't simply mention that you had this position. Add something to it that demonstrates what you did in that position, so that you're actually illustrating your capabilities and your cleverness and your talents. Okay, because simply mentioning it, well, that's nice and it might set you apart a little bit, but what will make your application more memorable is an illustration of what you did in this position, to to organize a really good event or to make a difference for students in some way. So add those specific details, not relatively briefly, but that can definitely help. What's the deadline to apply to Western, Spencer? Is it the same every year?
yep, it's you apply through OLSAS. So it's OLSAS is a subsection of OUAC where you had applied to King's. And it will be November 1st every year. And OLSAS is where you can also apply to other law schools in Ontario. You don't apply to places like UBC or American schools through OLSAS, it's only Ontario schools.
I don't see any other questions right now.
Yeah, I'm also open to people if they want to unmute themselves and you know, say some questions verbally or whatever. But if you guys are still thinking about questions, I'll say some commonly asked questions. Here's another one. If someone were to write more than one LSAT writing, would you look at all of them or just the latest one? Just the highest score one. Yeah. Okay. Bye, Miriam. Nice to see you again. Um, yeah, so I would assume we would look at the most recent, no, sorry, we would look at the highest writing score sample. So yeah, I wouldn't really worry about that because it's not really under your control. Yeah, I don't really think that the LSAT writing sample is a fair way to judge applicants, but that's what the admissions committee thinks, right? Like, I don't think it's fair when someone's super stressed and just trying to get through this crazy exam to look at their writing. I don't think we look at it too intensely. So I would just forget I said that and focus on writing the, yeah, Western law.
This is you're being asked to sell Western law as best you can. It seems like,
Yeah,
Spencer.
yeah, that's right. Well, although I don't get commission, I'll still try my best. Um, Western law, yeah, the student experience is amazing. Um, Yeah, sorry, just to jump ahead, don't worry about the LSAT writing sample. I regret saying that. It's honestly like it just is just a way for LSAC to LSAC to it's yeah it's yeah yeah, so again, don't really worry about it too much. So why Western law again? Western law's got a really good um like I said, it's a really collegial environment. The small group is a great selling feature of Western law, and a lot of our current students and past students, they swear by the small group. The small group also allows you to lean on others in your class throughout the whole process of law school and throughout the entire time that you're at law school. So I would say that's one of them. I'd say the expert professors is another really important aspect of Western law. I think the proximity to Toronto, if that's your goal, is a really good aspect of Western law also, because it's up there with York, U of T, Queens, and Western law. Like those are the close. We have Ryerson too, but those are the closest law schools to the Toronto area, which I know a lot of students are from. So if your goal is to work in Toronto or to be placed in Toronto, this is a great avenue to do so. What else about Western law? Um, yeah, I like the fact that all of the students take the same courses in the first year. That's something that really stood out to me when I learned about the program working here. I think that's nice because you get a nice base of knowledge, and then you get to specialize and do other things in your upper years. So that's just some of the ways that I think Western law sets himself apart. Yeah.
So we got two more questions. One about the extent to which having an MA gives you an edge in when applying.
Yeah, we don't look at master's grades because they're simply different than undergraduate grades, and the process behind how students obtain those grades is different. Because Western law is taught in a similar way to undergrad, we can't really use your master's grades, but the master's itself is factored in your personal profile. So just keep that in mind. You can definitely talk about what you've learned in your master's in your personal profile, similar to an experience or an employment area. So definitely consider mentioning that in your personal profile, and submit your and request your master's grades too, because we need those
Okay.
just to look at. We won't like judge you on them, but
Yeah, Spencer, we have Professor Andrea Lawler with us,
hello.
who's also teaches with me in the Department of Political Science.
Yes,
She has current experience at the Western Law School, and just asked to pitch in a little bit
absolutely. The
on the
floor
MA
is yours.
question. Go ahead, Andrea.
Thanks, Spencer. Thank you, John. Just for students who are considering MA work in advance of law school, it's a common question where students think that by going to take a master's, they'll somehow be elevated in consideration. Just to follow up on exactly what Spencer said, it's really, if your plan is to do a master's because you're just wholeheartedly engaged in the scholarship, great, do a master's. But if you see it as a stepping stone to law school, I will never characterize further education as a waste, but it's not going to advance your cause. So just be careful about sort of saying, oh, I'm going to take a year off and do a master's, and that's going to help me. If you're going to do a master's in that year off, just make sure it's because that's what you want to do and that's how you want to spend your time, as opposed to viewing it as like, this is my ticket in. I just want you to be mindful because, as we know, tuition is expensive and it's a year of your life. So, think carefully how you want to use that time, and don't be afraid to talk to your faculty members like Dr. Grant or myself if you need any further advice on that route.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Spencer, what about the question of if you apply but don't get an offer of admission, then how long do you have to wait again to apply? You have to wait till the next cycle, obviously.
Yep, it's just a standardized cycle.
Yeah.
There's a few options. You can get admitted, you can be put on the wait list or denied. So if you're on the wait list, that means you're on the right track, but you might want to follow up with feedback, or you might want to self-assess and see if your scores are within that range, or if your personal profile could be improved. So that there's the three options for you. But yeah, it's only once a year because that's just how it is. We can only admit students at once every year.
Yeah, yeah. If a student is interested in starting law school in September of next year, but only really just, decided this, is there still enough time for them to put together a good application?
I mean, yes, if I would say, like, if you were, I don't know, yeah, it would be tough if you were to apply right now. Um, it all depends on the person, right? If you have a bit of money, like if you have $300 that you can just, you know, fork out for a application right now, 200 to start your OUAC account or LSAC account. No, OLSAS account, and then $100 to apply to Western. I feel like it's doable, but I wouldn't recommend it because you would be rushing it, and um, you might have to secure your references before November 1st, or maybe you'd have to secure at least requesting a reference before November 1st. I'd have to ask my boss about the distinction, but it's doable, but I definitely wouldn't recommend it. I would say, like, you're better off thinking about this in advance, because you would want to take an LSAT prep course, or at least self-study, or at least take some practice tests. Um, write the LSAT again if you need to, get your references, rewrite your personal statement, make sure that's good, make sure you know yourself and your strengths. So it's doable, but it's something that usually people think about it in 6 months in advance. You know what I mean? So yeah, that'd be my answer. If you're applying to just Western and you stay up all night from here to November 1st, it is doable,
Yeah,
but not recommended.
yeah.
And you also don't need to have written the LSAT by the time you apply to Western
Right.
Law. You can simply register for it and then write it during the process.
Yeah. I'm going to bundle a couple of questions. One is whether there are seats allocated to discretionary categories. So are there student admissions allocated to those categories? And then whether Western undergraduate students get any sort of preferential treatment compared to non-Western?
I mean, if it was up to me, then they would, but no, I think we love Western students, but we can't prefer them because that's not fair, right?
Yeah.
So if you're a strong student and a Western student, that's great. You know what I mean? And a lot of Western students apply to Western Law because it's a great school and they're used to the city, or they just like the way that Western operates. So we do have a fair amount of Western students, but it's not like a 70%, I don't even think it's like 40%, and that's factoring in the JD, HBA JD students, so the Ivy and JD students. So we get about 20 of those, and that's not factoring those in. So yeah, we don't prefer them. And the first part of the question was what again? The discretionary categories. Yeah, we don't have like quotas or anything. We just take the competitive candidates that we get. So if you're competitive and you happen to be in one of those categories, that's great. But it would be unfair of us to like either give those people an advantage or a disadvantage, right?
Yeah.
We just sort of have to do it on an individual basis. And
yeah. We have another question clarifying what to mention about taking a less than full-time course load. Obviously, if a student has been doing part-time studies, they would want to mention that and explain why. But if a student has just been taking a half credit less, every year than the full amount, does that require any explanation?
Yeah, so on our website, we say that Western Law prefers full course load, although it's not required. but I would say definitely mention why that's the case.
Okay.
Especially if it's every year, if it's a pattern of behavior, definitely mention why that's the case. So then we don't assume things.
Yeah.
And like if you don't mention that the reason, then we might view your application as less competitive to those who have taken a full course load, because it's a lot of work. I
Yeah.
know only one course load less is not entirely significant, but it's less and less strenuous. So
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that clarification. If I can just say something in relation to your comments earlier about the quality of the writing sample that people put in. Obviously, you've pointed out that the LSAT writing sample is not something that an application will typically live or die on. But when it comes to writing your personal statement, this is something that you have a lot of time to craft. And so it would look peculiar to an admissions committee if your personal statement has multiple spelling errors or grammatical errors, or the sentences are bizarrely constructed. So it's an opportunity for you to work on that over a period of time, to edit it very closely with your peers who are also strong writers, to have a professor look over it as well. There's really no justification for having writing errors in your personal statement.
Yeah, I like how direct you professors can be, because that's spot on. I think, yeah, if you take the applications for those who are interested next year open up in late August until November 1st. That's a long time. And you don't have to just wait. Then you don't have to start then. You can start now if you wanted to for next year with your personal statement, or just jotting down ideas or whatever. Those statements won't change until next year. I would be surprised if they do, because they haven't changed in a while. So yeah, definitely show us. That's part of the tangible, intangible thing, and I'll get into it a little bit because you're my King's friend. So like your writing sample, it's important what you say, but it's also important how you communicate that, right? Because that shows how good of a writer you are. It shows how ready you are for law school. It shows how ready you are for this next step. So definitely try to make sure everything's as good as it can be for those reasons.
Yeah.
Oh, also I see one for the Ivy. If those of you who are in your first year or second year and are applying to Ivy, I have a Ivy information session on the November 9th. So please email me and we can get in touch, and I'll link you to the Zoom link, and it's with the Ivy Law Club and a few current HPA JD students. And it's sort of Ivy specific. So if you're interested in that, please email me at lawapp@uwo.ca.
Great, thank you for that information, Spencer. There's one more question, and then we're at 11:30, so we'll probably cut it off after that. It's a question about whether a personal statement should sort of be a litany of facts about an applicant, or whether there should those facts could be woven into more of a narrative or a story about that person's maybe that person's trajectory through undergrad and why they want to go to law school. Can you just clarify for us whether one of those approaches is preferred, or whether it's better to have that a bit of a narrative so it comes across like a bit of a, is that more engaging and interesting potentially?
Yeah, I can't speak to how engaging or interesting it would be, because I haven't read any personal statements yet, as I am so new here. But it's not a bullet point list. It's not a resume. Yeah. It's a personal statement. You're stating why you're a competitive applicant, what you have done, and what you plan to do to make yourself succeed at law school, right? So if the narrative style is preferred, that makes sense to me, at least. And yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah. How does that sound to you, Andrea?
I would absolutely agree with Spencer. And just remember, yes, this is an opportunity for you to shine. It is absolutely okay to talk yourself up. You don't need to employ overly flowery language. You don't need to demonstrate all the $100 words. Speak in your own voice. Use, sort of plain language that's easily understandable by the committee. Remember, they are reading hundreds of these, so you don't want to tax them like by what is the student trying to say, right? You can, again, use your own voice, and a narrative is lovely, especially when you're talking about the things that make you an interesting candidate and a unique candidate. And so you can emphasize those things confidently. Also, just bear in mind, nobody expects you to have your life set up right now. So, you don't need to say, I'm going to be a criminal litigator and this, I am just so committed to this. You can be open to the possibility of change. They understand that. And, most people who are going into law school have different ambitions by the time they come out. So, yes, it's great to indicate that you have goals and preferences, but nobody's tying you to those. So, just bear that in mind as well.
On a meeting note, I wouldn't mind staying for a little bit longer if others would like to stay for longer. So unless everyone has stuff to do, but King's is a great place. I'm a King's grad, Andrea. So yeah. So if anyone has any more questions, we'll get through those, and I'll leave around 11:45 if that's what you all want. But yeah, definitely. My boss, Danielle Lacasse, the Assistant Dean of Admissions and Recruitment, is very, very much like a King's person. I don't know how else to say that, but I think you all know what I mean. Danielle understands the individual. Danielle understands people's circumstances and really has a positive view of humanity, if that makes sense too. I mean, Danielle will consider your circumstance, and Danielle's leadership throughout the admissions committee and down to myself, we really want to see the individual, and we really want to hear your circumstance, and we want to hear your story and what makes you different. And to be honest, we want to round out our class with really interesting and awesome people. So just keep that in mind when you're writing your statement and when you're applying.
Thank you, Spencer, for offering to stay around. I think I've got another 10 minutes that I can stay for. I think at this point, maybe Denise will end the recording, and